In this tutorial, we're going to talk about using the Finder in the Sage 300 database and how to customize the columns that show up in the Finder. So we're going to talk about accounts receivable customers. Of course, this information can be used for any list in the Sage 300 database, including vendors, inventory numbers, general ledger accounts, and so forth. So I'm going to open the Sage 300 customer list in accounts receivable. So the first thing to point out is that the Finder is available anytime you've got the Finder button, which looks like a magnifying glass beside a field. So you can see in this example, of course, the customer number has a Finder. The national account number has a Finder. Bear in mind that the national account is an optional module which you may not actually have activated in your system, in which case you would not have the national account Finder or field. And of course this customer group, which is a required field in the Sage 300 database. So I'm going to click the Finder. I can also access the Finder by pressing F5 when I'm in any searchable field. F5 on the keyboard will bring up the list. So you can see in this list that you've got a number of columns here. And if I scroll to the right, you can see a lot of customer information, address, phone numbers, account type, group, etc., whether they're active. And those fields all can be searched on in the Sage 300 Finder as it is right now. So say I want to use a search by customer name and I want to choose starts with. In a really large database, starts with is actually a faster search. In sample data it really doesn't matter, but also you might not have the option because you might not know what the customer name starts with. So we're going to use Coastal Electric. We're going to try to find them. So I'm just going to start typing, and since auto search is checked, you'll notice that the Finder brought up Coastal Electric before I'd even finished typing the word coast. If I click on that, of course, you can see it brings up the customer. If I click on the Finder again, it's going to remember the last search. So the last search that I did when logged in as myself was customer name starts with. So I'm going to do customer name contains, and I want to find a customer that contains the word house. So we're going to let it search, and now you can see that the customer name is The House Doctors. Maybe I wasn't sure if it was The House Doctors or just plain old House Doctors. That's where the contains becomes a very useful option. I can also search by customer name or customer group rather. I can search by city. I can search by state, such as maybe I want to find all California customers. So if I scroll over, I can see that all of these customers are in California. What happens though if I'm wanting to do a lookup but the field that I want is not available? In that case, I can simply click Settings and I can go to Columns. You can have up to 50 columns in your Finder. Right now we have 23, so we can certainly add a few to that list. So I am going to add another field. So what field would I like to add? I want to know when the last invoice for this customer was, because I'm sort of looking through my customer database and I want to see what's the activity, and I just want to use the Finder to do that. Rather than writing a report, I just want to use the Finder. So I'm going to scroll down because I know that last invoice date is a field available in the system. And I'm paging down. So now we've got let's see, we've got all our statistical information. We got largest invoice. Maybe I want to see that. So I'm going to keep going, and I want to go date. Sometimes, okay, here we go. We've got the date of the last invoice. So here we go. Date of the last invoice. You've got to be careful because you might, pick the wrong field thinking you're picking something else. So I'm going to highlight that field. I'm going to hit include, and that's going to be added to the end of the selected list. If I scroll down, there it is. If I want it to show more to the left, I'm just going to click up. So you can rearrange your columns in your Finder. And I'm going to click OK, and now you can see the third column is now date of the last invoice. So just by looking at this, I can see that Mr. Ronald Black hasn't done anything with us for a while, and I can see that these two customers have not done anything really ever. So I'm going to clear this California because I want to see my whole customer list so you can see what's going on with these customers. So for instance, the sample data is dated as of 2020, so if I look, well, he hasn't done anything in 5 years, maybe I want to make him inactive. So I can just open this and I can click OK to make him inactive. Now, of course, in this instance, I can't because he has unpaid documents, so he can't be made inactive. But if the customer had a zero balance and all invoices had been paid, you could actually do that. Going back to the Finder, you can also look at the Finder in a couple different ways. So these are the field names, but in the database itself, the field names are not these nice English names. So if you're doing report writing, the Finder can be really useful in figuring out what the field names are. So I'm going to just click on Settings, and I'm going to use Field Name as column heading. So you can see in the AR customer field, or file rather, that the customer number is ID cust, the name is name cust. Some of these fields aren't really all that obvious, so SW active, that's not that clear. So you can use that to figure out what field names are if you're doing report writing. You can also export customer information right from the Finder. So I'm going to actually uncheck this because I don't want that. And if I click File Export, it's going to export my customers. So you always want to click Browse because you want to make note of where the file is going to be sent. Because if you just leave it blank, you'll probably never find it. So I'm going to choose my S drive in my exports folder. I'm actually going to overwrite a previous export. So I'm going to hit save and I'm going to click OK. It's going to ask me if I want to overwrite. I am going to overwrite. So there we are. So now if I browse to that folder, I go to my S drive, I go to exports, my customer Finder export, and now I can actually see this is my whole customer list. So you can see, of course, that the export does give you the raw field names. So that's where that field names can be very helpful. So closing that, I'm not going to save. That is how you can use the Finder, customize the Finder, and use it to look up information in your Sage database.